Bonjour à tous, hello everyone, bienvenue à une autre émission de Learn French with Madame. So welcome back to another episode of Learn French with Madame. Today we are going to be talking about le futur simple. So today we're going to talk about one of the future tenses. It's one of my favorite ones to talk about. If you watched my previous video on the future simple, then you kind of got a really quick breakdown on it. Today, we're going to go more in depth, talk about it a little bit more, and we're going to talk about some irregulars, okay? So let's go ahead and start. We've previously learned how to talk about the future with this example. So we have ce soir, je vais regarder la télé. So we've learned to use the future tense by using the present tense of aller plus an infinitive to form the future proche. So we've already learned the future proche back in French 2 when we're saying things that are going to happen relatively quickly, like things that you're going to do later in the same day or later within the next couple of minutes. So we've learned how to use the future proche. Today, we're going to dive deeply into the future and talk about the future simple to say things that have happened in any other way. All right. So like I said, that previous example was the near future, things that you're going to do relatively quickly. So let's look at a different example. So we have ce soir, je regarderai la télé. So we still have our stem, but our stem is the infinitive of the verb. So just the verb not changed, and then we add an ending to it. So normally when we conjugate verbs, we take off an ending and we add a new ending. With the future simple, we're going to keep our verb in the full form, and we're just going to tack something onto the end of it. So this is called the future simple. All right. So now let's talk about what we're going to use the future simple for. So you use it to say things that will happen or you're going to do at any point in the future. It could be 2 days from now, it could be 6 months from now, or 7 years. It's any point in the future tense. All right, so how does it work? So the future tense, the future simple is the stem, the infinitive verb. You're not going to change it. So you take the infinitive and you add a new ending. So the verb is one word plus your new ending. All right, so here are some examples. So we have je and travailler as our verb. We're going to leave it in the infinitive and just tack on our new ending, a, e. For to, we have the verb jouer. We leave it as the infinitive and tack on as. Il, elle, and on, we're going to tack on an a. So for il, we have partir, and we add a to equal partira. For elle, we have the verb descendre, and then for on, we have the verb boire. Now be careful with RE verbs. Notice that there is no E on the end. So for RE verbs, we take off that E and then we add our new ending. And this is because all verbs in the future simple have to end in an R before the ending. So if you look, we have travailler, jouer, partir, and then we have descendre, but because it ends in an E, we need to take off the E, and so it ends in an R. So it becomes elle descendra and on boira. Now, there's a lot of verbs, too, that are normally irregular in the present tense, like boire, but actually are regular in the future. So that's kind of a nice thing about it. Okay, couple more examples. We have nous and travailler. For nous, we just add on our ONS, so it's travailleront. For vous, we have jouer and we add on jouerai. For il is partir, we have partiront. And elles descendront. So again, no E on those RE verbs. Okay, but there are some verbs that wouldn't be French if there wasn't any irregular verbs. So there are some verbs that are irregular, but the stem is still going to end in an R. So just like I mentioned with those RE verbs, when you take off that E, the stem still has to end in an R. So these are just a couple examples of irregular verbs that are pretty frequently going to show up in French, but there are a bunch more. So just the first couple ones, we have être, and être is always irregular. So we have je serai, so that ser, S-E-R, in red is your stem. For avoir, we have j'aurai. For aller is j'irai. Venir is viendrai. Venir is a very irregular verb in the future tense. Faire is ferai, so it's F-E-R. Devoir changes to devrais. Pouvoir changes to pourrais, so je pourrais. Vouloir changes to je voudrais. So it's just like the stem in the imparfait with the V-O-U-D-R. Then voir changes to verrai, and envoyer is enverrai. So these are not all of the irregular verbs in French, but these are most of them that are super like high frequency that you'll see very often. I know this seems like a lot, but I promise if you just practice writing this over and over and over again and making like some flashcards, that would help too to remember the irregular verbs. Okay? But that is the futur simple. That is it. So all you have to remember is that it takes an infinitive plus a new ending, and that there are some irregular ones, mainly the ones that we just talked about. And then remember that RE verbs drop the E when you add the ending on. So all stems have to end in an R. Okay? C'est tout pour aujourd'hui. That's it for today. Si vous avez des questions, envoyez-moi un email. Mais c'est tout et à plus.